The COVID-19 crisis has shown us that our old systems are not fit anymore for the 21st century. It has laid bare the fundamental lack of social cohesion, fairness, inclusion, and equality. In short, we need a great reset.
I'm Chuck Black, and this is the Age of Ingenuity, our weekly chronicle of Canada's current innovation economy.
And I'm Alan Calder, and we're going to also be taking a look at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's recently posted speech referencing the Great Reset, Agenda 21-2030, and centralized world government. It's no longer a conspiracy theory if they publicly brag about the plan.
But before we get started, I want you to remember to like, to comment, to share, and to subscribe to support this vidcast on Patreon and PayPal. And with that said and done, here are the stories we're currently tracking. And our first story tonight is proof positive that the Great Reset and Agenda 2030 are no longer just conspiracy theories. And for this, I reference a November 15th, 2020 Twitter post from a guy named Andy Swan, who noted that the leader of Canada is admitting that COVID is an excuse to institute a new global economic order. And I just want to listen to what our Prime Minister is saying on this, and then we'll go into a little bit of detail about where he said it and why he's saying it.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Has he left out any buzzwords, Al?
I think he meant race, maybe, and transgender.
The segment was actually taken from a speech the Canadian Prime Minister gave to a United Nations conference on September 29th, 2020. My guess is that he's doing a job interview with his next employer, but you could never tell about this sort of stuff. You go.
You don't get a job like this without your boss being the devil. I mean, getting into the ins and outs of it here.
Yeah.
He already has the credentials for what he's got to do. He's doing it already then. And that man with the devil, his dad.
Yeah, I agree with that. The tweet of the Trudeau video spent most of the weekend trending on Twitter. Everybody noticed it.
Who was that guy, though, Chuck?
Who is the guy?
Adam Savage. Should I know him?
I don't know. You mean Andy Swan?
There we are. Here we are. Yes.
I don't know. Let me Google Andy Swan.
I try to. You know what? I think I cut and paste his name and try to find out about it. I found a bit about it, but he didn't seem like he had a giant following or anything like that.
No, I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that. No, I don't think anything special about him, but I also think it's perfectly normal to Google him. I mean, how would he know about this speech in September 2019 at the UN?
A lot of Chuck. This is the kind of thing. If you would, it's easy to find this stuff if you follow it online.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like I think you and me follow, even though we have approximately the same ideas about knowledge, etc.
Yeah.
We follow different people then. Like we have some overlaps. Like for example, you helped me out at the start with it's Corbett, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
He's like the big one. I'll say Alex Jones got me started. You refined it a bit. I had like a million steps in between that. But my things became a bit more conspiratorial and maybe back of the back page kind of stuff more so than the front page.
Yeah, how about I agree with that? I would also argue that our Prime Minister wasn't just virtue signaling to potential future employers. That's what I said. But his government has also posted policy papers on this topic on Government of Canada websites. And for that, I referenced the July 15th, 2019 Government of Canada post towards Canada's 2030 Agenda National Strategy. Let me see if I can bring that up. There it is.
Yeah.
And this is all the stuff the Canadian government is going to do to support the 2030 UN agenda. It's everything the Canadian government is going to do to bring back better. It's everything the Canadian government is going to do to support the new world order.
Chuck, if I have an exception to the way you worded that, then this is the government's plan, not what they're going to do, right? Like
Yeah,
what they're
good
going to
point.
do will occur when it happens then, but the government at the moment's plan of this is not going to happen until
Yeah.
2030. Like, I know I'm just being a
Some
dick
of
about
it'll
it, but
happen before 2030. The end
it'll have
result
to.
is 2030, but some of it'll start happening beforehand.
I agree then, but here's the thing though, that suggests that the government will still be in place then,
Yeah.
right? The same government will still be in place to force it through then. Nonetheless, other ideas though. I think that it's getting perilously close to being not out of government, and the government's being out of power. I feel like that a bit. It's getting close to that.
I don't know. My fear is the Conservative government in Canada and the NDP implicitly, perhaps not explicitly, but implicitly they support this. The new Aaron O'Toole hasn't come out against it, hasn't said anything bad about it, uses much of the same jargon. He's supporting on this.
It's the same like I agree with you about that, but NDP is explicitly come out on board with the Liberals though. That's a difference.
Yeah, NDP is explicitly in favor of this. The Conservatives implicitly use the jargon and are going to follow along, even while they admit they're entirely different from the Liberals.
Yeah, they hinted along at the moment for now. Then
Yeah.
during COVID, COVID is no time to talk about anything important.
Yeah, that's. I also note the July 15th, 2020 Government of Canada post. Canada takes action on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which we should be able to pull up here. This talks about everything they want to do. These things all sound wonderful and all sound lovable, and the paper doesn't really talk about how they're going to afford this. My perception is that they plan essentially on printing money or invoking a communist utopia to pay for all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll pay with their hopes and dreams then, right?
Yeah.
Well, it seems. I hope it's as effective as gaining votes and paying for currency in the past with our cripplingly high debt and increasing deficit due to hopes and dreams and equality.
Yeah, I would say we're pushing against increasingly high deficits. If Trudeau calls an election next week, he might win again. If he waits for 2 more months and inflation is kicked in, he probably won't win again. So we'll see what happens.
Hey, I'm sorry, Chuck. I think there's like a bit of a coup worldwide Western leaders of sorts then as of late, right? So Trudeau's should be shaking in his boots then. But then again, he's high stakes establishment globalist then. But what about Boris Johnson? Do you think then?
I don't know. I thought Boris Johnson was once good, but he got COVID. He was really sick. He came back, and he's never been quite the same.
And you know what that made me think of, though, Chuck, is that how hard would it be to give someone COVID?
I don't know. It's obviously harder than just hugging them. We go to the parades every Saturday, and we hug people, and we haven't got it yet.
Hey, well, maybe the best place to hide from COVID is around a lot of people then, or maybe there's such a thing. The herd immunity thing is true then, and the good herd is immune, and the people feeding from the trough on the couch are not immune, is more likely then. And as this comes back in the winter, statistically, people will come out and die then, statistically.
Yeah, I would argue that if you look at the people who go to the protests, we generally look healthier and hale and hearty when compared to the people who've been indoors and
you can see
sitting on the couch for 9 months.
You can see the difference, Chuck. It's unnerving, actually.
Yeah,
it really is though. Like I wouldn't have thought that true, but we go there, you can see though the difference though. not even in the summertime, just like you just see the deal then, but it's weird. Anyway.
Here is a little bit of background on what the government does to build consensus for policies like this. They use something called the Delphi method. Let me see if I can pull. The Delphi method is one of my favorite methodologies. It's a process used to arrive at a group opinion or decision by surveying a panel of experts. The first stage is where all the information from the experts is collected by the organizers of the event, who take off everybody's name and then drop the things they don't like and then feed the information back to the audience. And the audience immediately thinks, my opinion wasn't good enough to have made the cut. And then they start focusing on what's left on the table. And over time, the experts who can adjust their answer each round, they start coming towards a consensus. And the point about whether or not it's a true consensus or whether it's a consensus engineered by the organizers is a reasonable discussion to have. But I think that the Trudeau government has been using this a lot over the last 4 or 5 years.
That's funny. Sorry to cut you off, Chuck. This is sound like how Scheer got elected, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say that
the conservative. It sounds more like the conservatives, more like the conservative leadership campaign and election process than anything else I've heard of. I'm serious about that though too.
Yeah, I would argue that it's exactly the process they used back in 2016 for that aerospace review back in the day when you and I were covering the aerospace industry.
And was it then?
It was, absolutely. They had a whole bunch of meetings with a whole bunch of what they called stakeholders. The stakeholders went into the room, they gave their information, and the organizers came back after collating all the information, and all the bad ideas were off the table, and they came to a consensus. But
bad ideas were off the table, and this is what happened.
The consensus was we should be doing things the same way, exactly as we always did. We should be buying component parts and then fabricating it into bigger components and selling it to the primary contractors in the US and Europe. That was their plan.
We'll just throw all ideas out and just keep doing the same thing. So we don't have to think about any new ideas that,
everything, but I would argue the consensus developed using the Delphi method can be subverted to pre-selected conclusions. Basically, if Trudeau wants to make, I don't know, build back better, he can do that. If he wants to get everybody to follow Agenda 2030, he can do that as well.
See what I mean? You can't even think of one good idea that he's got to bring up.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any idea. He's got no ideas, is the thing, Chuck.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. I would also argue that the tweet and Trudeau's speech were noted around the world. For example, let me pull this up again, the November 16th post-millennial article. Here it comes. Oddly enough, the article is breaking. Tucker Carlson slams Justin Trudeau and the Great Reset. I think it's kind of funny that a Canadian magazine talking about a Canadian quote from a Canadian Prime Minister references an American program host.
Can you take that? Can you X that out so I can take a look at the picture here?
Sure, I can. Oh, I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
It's not for me. It's for our countless followers.
Well, certainly I haven't counted them.
Well, I haven't, and there's not just me.
Yeah. Here we go. Tucker Carlson slammed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday night for his remarks jumping on an opportunity for a reset amid the coronavirus pandemic to reimagine America's economic systems. I'm not going to click on the link.
By the way, he didn't mention reimagine America's economic system. He just said reimagine economic systems. That's per the article.
Well, Tucker was talking to an American audience. The post-millennial is talking to a Canadian audience. That's why they referenced an American.
Oh, fair enough. I just was I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
All I could do was edit the words. Like,
Yeah, and according to Carlson, the coronavirus crisis has been used as a launch point to achieve a social justice wish list.
mhm.
Spearheaded by the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset is an elitist attempt to enact global socialism based around a set of values that comprise a new religion. He called it a new religion,
Mhm.
mostly because individuals are called to worship each other and draw morality from what is perceived to be the best group outcome. And that goes back to the Delphi methodology and the way these decisions are being made. Democracy is out the door, consensus is in the door. And yeah.
Just say it. Just say it. Like, I get it, Chuck. Sorry.
That's the book I gave you, The True Believer, written by a guy in the 1950s. It's a wonderful book. We will include a link to it in the show notes. Also like to reference the November 16th, 2020 RT post, Russia Today. RT is what they call it now. Great Reset trends on Twitter after Trudeau's speech on COVID-19 hints that it's not just a conspiracy. So now we know for sure, because it was posted on Twitter, we know this is not a conspiracy theory. It's actual things that are happening that up until now nobody's wanted to talk about.
If it's on Twitter, it's not a fact until it's on Twitter. By
I thought it
someone
had to be.
on Twitter. Then.
I thought it had to be on Fox.
Yes.
It was on both.
Hey, how's this for a thought, Chuck? Is that when I was growing up, Fox was the whack job network. Now they're the only ones that seems like telling any truth as well. It's frightening.
Yeah, although I heard stories that they weren't nice enough to President Trump on election night, and now they've lost a large portion of their audience. So that shows you that the nuttiness that's happening in the world today.
The world's broken, but nonetheless, though, that just saying Fox though is that I used to respect the CBC at the same time though.
Yeah, I used to respect the CBC. I would say that objectively the CBC is nowhere near as good as it was, say, 20 years back.
100%, Chuck. 100%. I'm going to once again reference the Don Cherry firing story as well.
Yeah, we will include a link to that in the show notes as well. I think Don Cherry was the last great Canadian announcer. He was canned about 2 years back, wasn't he?
He was, for some comment he made.
Yeah, just because I don't know, people dogpiled on him.
Mm-hmm. It's because it's us. The problem is the mob is in control of us all now.
Yeah, I would say the mob and the World Economic Forum is in charge of us now. They are the ones who came up with the idea of a great reset. Let me see if I can pull up the story.
The mob is the mother of all tyrants.
Yeah, this is the World Economic Forum website page focused around the Great Reset. We'll include the link in the show notes. The page notes that the current disparate decision-making bodies around the world need to be centralized and must in the future include multinational corporations, world-class companies with a strong interest in developing systematic solutions to key challenges, by doing things like modeling and crowdsourcing.
Or maybe building weapons.
Well, maybe building weapons, maybe.
Or possibly making vaccines or making diseases. One of the two. I wonder which pays better.
Yeah, I talked to you about that. I think that comes under the title of quiet weapons for silent wars.
Well, probably that's what you're very influential towards me, Chuck. I talk to you all the time. Maybe it was you who brought this up.
But I think the idea was there was this guy years and years ago who theorized that quiet weapons are needed because in any sort of a hot war, you can always escalate to a nuclear exchange, which blows up everything and makes war not really profitable. So you have to go towards regional conflicts and warfare that's not generally perceived of as being warfare. Things like economic warfare,
like sanctions.
Yeah, or vaccine warfare or weather warfare.
Bio warfare, we'll call that.
Or educational warfare, things that
Money, economic warfare for sure.
Yeah, things that can't be defined as warfare immediately. And who knows, maybe the World Economic Forum and their Great Reset is economic.
Well, Chuck, you know that book that I chatted about, the EHM Economic Hitman?
Yeah.
That one, I mean, they were sent by someone.
Well, they were sent by the American government. I remember
that. Sort of the guy who wrote the book worked for like a consultancy firm called Chase. At the time, it's called Chase.
Yeah.
And you know, so he got the job because his girlfriend was the daughter of some guy in that, like some partner in that. Then he got the job. He wasn't skilled. He was like a bachelor of baking or something shitty like that.
Yeah.
He was like, and so he got the job like that. Then he was suddenly in charge of people who were making economic forecasts. His job was presented to like Manuel Noriegas of the world.
Yeah, he was perceived as being a salesman, but he didn't necessarily have to understand the underlying assumptions, which were always twofold. From the client side, the assumption was that they were going to get rich, and from the seller side, from the side of the U.S. government, was eventually going to own everything.
Yeah, their side's not even worth mentioning, Chuck. Like their side was these giant contracting agencies, like they already work with to build bombs, can build bridges too.
Yeah,
and
they can build bridges, but they won't. They set up an economic infrastructure where the country where the bridge is built won't really own the bridge. They'll just pay rent on it, and eventually the rent will escalate so much that the country won't be able to afford it.
Crippling debt like Venezuela, right?
Absolutely. I think that's part of what happened to Venezuela. I think there were other issues as well, but that's part of it. Yeah.
Chuck, I'll go on record to suggest that now that Biden is in, they're gonna totally go hard on Venezuela.
How come?
Well, he is a creature of the deep state, and they were pissed off that they didn't get in there last time. They were exposed by their garbage invasion, you know, and they made the mainstream news how there was bullshit. It made it obviously fools of themselves in, and their Guaido thing didn't work on their side yet. They worked on the American side, which is weird, and they're gonna need it's the reason why it's because out of nations the second most amount of oil in the world other than Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I heard that, and I understand the United States wants to grow its control in Venezuela. They don't like what the Venezuelans are doing. They're keeping some of the oil for themselves.
Well, not the ones that the Americans can't steal them, but they want to set up American companies in Venezuela, though, right? To prevent the Venezuelans from owning any of it, though.
No, I agree with that. And with that said and done, I note that many people smarter than us have similar sorts of ideas. I note the November 14th, 2020 Greg Hunter YouTube post under the title Martin Armstrong, The Reset is Communism, which categorizes the Great Reset being promoted by the World Economic Forum being primarily about instituting communism, destroying money and economies, and turning everybody into a proletarian working class reporting to the Communist Party. I think there's some subtleties in this analysis. They're arguing that the bankers are starting to worry about their debt load being carried by national governments, and national governments are objectively never going to pay back the money to the banks ever again. This is starting to impact the bank's bottom line, and the solution, according to Martin Armstrong, is to nationalize everything, which will allow the nations to pay back the money to the banks, bring the banks in as leaders, part of the ruling class, and institute a communist regime where nobody knows or owns anything. If the state owns everything, nobody can expropriate anything, or nobody can take over anything, and nothing else really changes. But the government still go bankrupt, and that's what this guy's theory is.
That's a great theory, but I don't think it's valid, to be honest. Then,
how come?
People take pretty serious pride in their ownership, though. They'll take it very personally then. And even though at the point of this in Canada at the moment, the Queen does own all of Canada on paper, right?
Yeah.
I feel proud of my house, for example. Then I won't take the banks owning everything, including every single other thing in everyone else's house, everyone's corner store. Like, why did we keep selling off Air Canada or Petrocan?
Yeah.
Like, why did we were going state, we're leaving the global, or rather the Canadian nationalist idea that now we're going to want to come back to it.
Yeah. How about I don't know, but even this video isn't the only one that suggests a return to communism or a pre-modern state with communal ownership. For this, I referenced the October 31st American Institute of Economic Research post. Lockdowns recreated a pre-modern caste system. I actually really like this article. It's well written, it's informative, and it talks specifically about how COVID is resurrecting what amounts to a pre-modern ethos of how society deals with the presence of infectious diseases. And it's not clear whether this is by accident or design. What is in fact happening is indisputable. We are hurting ourselves in fits and starts and moving towards a new system of caste created in the name of disease mitigation. You have the lower quality people who have to go to work in construction, work in manual labor, work to clean things, and they are the lower class. They are the untouchables who clean toilets. You have a middle class, which can mostly work from home as long as they don't go out or cause too much trouble. They are the paper pushers, things like that. And that's what the internet's for. That's what 5G internet's for, so that the paper pushers can do all their work. There is also an upper class, an elite, who continue on with their fancy jets and their ability to cross borders on a whim, and they get to do what they want. And this is what the lockdowns are pushing us towards. No mobility. I mean, even in Ontario, the government is telling us to maintain our own social circle, which, no rich people for you, Al.
And those are the stories we're covering this week. As always, the articles we've referenced are listed in the show notes.
If you'd like to promote your event or your activity, or if you think you have insight into Canada's current innovation economy, then send me an email. I'm at chuck.black@protonmail.com.
And we're still on YouTube and BitChute, and expect to be on Brighteon last week. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and comment on our posts. Even better.
I tried to get on Brighteon last week.
Regardless, Chuck, if you like the content we create, please send some money to our Patreon and PayPal accounts. We truly appreciate your patrons. God knows we could use the help.
And that's all for this week. We will be back next week with more stories covering our current age of ingenuity, and damn it, we'll be on Brighteon.